that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell.
Hello.
This is the famous Tom Fennell. I am the not very famous George Harvey. And Energy Week is basically a week's news about energy. I keep a blog called geoharvey.wordpress.com. That's GEOHARVEY. And I post news relating to energy and climate change and such every day. And usually get up 10 to 15 items. Well, always get up 10 to 15 items. And we collect the ones that we think are the most interesting for the week and put them up on this show. And so we should just start in. Since today is Thursday, we start with last Thursday, doing a week's news. And whoops, what is this? Thursday, November 12th, around 4 coal-powered plants are poised to come up every week in China. However, chances are they will remain underutilized, given the existing glut.
Come online.
This is 4 coal plants coming online every week.
Wow.
However, they will remain underutilized because of the existing glut. Around 155 projects with a total capacity of 123 gigawatts got the green signal in 2015 alone. This despite the fact that China has practically no need for the electricity they will produce.
That's interesting. I wonder how that happened.
Whoa, what is going on here? Somebody has got a lot of money involved in these things, I suspect. And the Chinese...
It's interesting when you're a combination of communism and capitalism.
Well,
it's interesting what you can do.
Honestly, I think China is probably the most intensively capitalistic society in the world.
Oh, it probably is.
Yeah,
But they're still communist.
Officially, they're communist, yeah. Okay. So that was from Yahoo News UK. And we have a picture there that's kind of disturbing of Chinese coal plants.
Yeah, that one I think it's right on the border of Manchuria. It's Chinese ownership, but the Manchurians don't agree with them. But it's a Chinese plant. Yeah.
We should point out that Manchuria is part of China. You sure you mean Manchuria?
As far as China is concerned.
Okay, all right. Okay. Is there any claimant to be the emperor of Manchuria these days?
There probably is about 4 or 5. I don't know.
Okay. So the next item is from Europe Online magazine. German utility giant E.ON recorded record losses of 5.7 billion euros, which is $6.1 billion, for the first 9 months of 2015 as its older fossil fuel power plants declined in value amid a switch to renewable energy. There was a write-down of 8.3 billion euros due to the recent decline in fuel prices, with energy plants barely turning a profit.
But the company's still making money.
Well,
with all these losses, it says right here, it's still forecast a profit of between 1.4 and 1.8 billion euros for 2015.
I guess they're forecasting no more. Well, this is a write-down, you know. I mean,
there's financial shenanigans happening here.
Yeah.
It's not real reality, is it?
Not real reality. It's fake reality. Yeah, it's real enough if you're talking about the fact that they have plants that are losing their value. They are losing their value, and I suppose mines too, possibly. I don't know whether they own mines. Okay. The Independent tells us the government of the UK gives the fossil fuel industry nearly £6 billion a year in subsidies, almost twice the financial support it provides to renewable energy providers, according to a study by the Overseas Development Institute. The study challenges the popular idea that green energy requires extra taxpayer support.
I got a kind of a kick when I was reading this page. That guy there is George Osborne.
Which guy where?
On the screen.
Ah, could we see? Oh, I see. Okay.
He's a politician. He's a member of parliament, and he's the chancellor of the Exchequer, which I think is equivalent of Secretary of Treasury.
Yes, I believe that's
I
correct.
think so. He's a powerful guy.
Exchequer, by the way, is where the name of the game checkers comes from.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting little tidbit. I was interested in looking at this guy because he just doesn't look quite right as being a power plant engineer.
No, he
in
doesn't.
that picture.
Yeah.
The original picture was bigger, and I could see his gloves in it. They've never been worn before. Who is this guy?
Yes, well, we've heard that kind of story before.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in any case, it's what is happening over there is good. They're still doing a lot of offshore wind generation, even in England.
Well, there are things going on in the UK which I think are absolutely deplorable.
Yeah.
And I came across one of them today, which was that they have decided that they're going to close all their coal plants by 2025.
Yeah.
All of them.
Well,
What are they going to replace them with?
nuclear.
Nuclear and fracked gas.
Oh, good. They got frack gas in England?
They're doing it. The government is supporting.
They must be frack gas they're bringing in from somewhere else.
No, they're planning on fracking
fracking
England.
in England, huh?
They're planning. They're
Good luck,
they're
England.
just starting to do it, and
Yeah.
of course they haven't had any of the earthquakes yet. So it'll be
will.
interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens when the people, in Derbyshire suddenly discover that the ground is shaking beneath their feet.
Derbyshire.
Derbyshire, one of the
That's
most.
Derbyshire, isn't it?
It's Derbyshire.
Derbyshire.
And, it's the place where Pemberley was in Pride and Prejudice.
I didn't read that one.
Well, you should. It's
Yeah,
fun.
probably should, yeah.
It's absolutely fun. And as a matter of fact, it wouldn't hurt if you saw one of the movies, the TV series from 1995 with Jennifer Ely and Colin Firth. Wonderful. Probably.
really?
I think it's the best production I've ever seen on the screen. Wonderful.
They do
Absolutely
some good
wonderful.
stuff over there once in a
They
while.
do, yeah. And they had Lizzie, the star, Lizzie Bennett is portrayed by Jennifer Ely, who is this wonderful English girl, and you've lost your microphone? Okay, I just wanted to explain to everybody why they're seeing Tom looking in his lap. Lizzie Bennett is portrayed by a young woman who was born in North Carolina. Okay, let's talk about energy.
Let's move on.
Okay. The government, let's see, we've done the government. Yes. Friday,
Coming closer to home.
Friday, November 13th, from vtdigger.org, 2 weeks after a developer came to town to disclose details of what would be Vermont's largest wind turbine site, the project's opponents presented an impassioned case against building any wind farms in Stilesbrook Forest. Opponents to the proposed painted a picture of troubles at a meeting they organized. And there's a picture of the meeting.
I think.
I will tell you, I think this is part of a pattern of bullying.
We've talked about that before. It's the same bullies, isn't it?
I believe it is. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the person, but the sense that I get is this is a matter of somebody coming into the town or somebody being brought into the town and explaining to everybody how their health is going to be destroyed and how the birds are going to be killed and how the land prices are going to go down and how everything is going to go wrong and the world's going to come to an end if they let wind turbines in. And in fact, as we have said, wind turbines save birds compared to the ones they...
Interestingly enough, you're right.
Yeah.
It's intuitively wrong, but you're right.
Well, there was a...
First, how to avoid these things.
Well, not only that, but I mean, there was an estimate of 440,000 birds killed in the United States in 2012 by wind turbines. And I'm not going to argue that that's wrong. I think it might be right. But one of the inventories that I saw that was done by a generating facility in the United States, they estimated, as carefully as they could, 5,000 birds were killed in the inventory period, which was 48 hours.
Wow.
All right, 440,000 birds per year is about one bird every 72 seconds. 5,000 birds by running into the wind turbines or the masts.
Okay.
The 5,000 birds being killed in 48 hours is one every 40 seconds. And that's at one facility. Except for one thing that means we're not talking about apples and oranges here. We're talking about, we're not talking about apples and apples. We're talking about apples and oranges. Sorry about that. The facility that had 5,000 birds killed in 48 hours didn't have a wind turbine in sight. It was coal and nuclear.
Okay. So they're flying into the cooling tower.
They're flying into the cooling towers and smokestacks in the fog. You know, I mean, we have to get real about this.
Deceptive stuff going on here.
Benjamin Sovacool, who's an internationally known energy researcher and happens to be an adjunct professor at the Vermont Law School, did calculations, and what he came up with is that if you're talking about a unit of energy that is produced by wind and results in one bird being killed, the same amount of energy would result in about 35 or 36 birds being killed if it comes from fossil fuels.
Now, that's an interesting statistic. We don't hear that on.
No, we don't, but it does explain why the Audubon Society has said, yes, we support this wind project or that. And they go into wind projects, and apparently they don't just say, yeah, wind is great. They say, we want to see what's nesting, what's flying by, what migrates through this area, and we want to make sure that the area is safe. And what they do with wind turbines that are in areas of heavy migration, and this is something you can't do with a coal plant. They can't.
Shut them down.
They'll shut the turbines down
During the migration.
during the migration. Yeah,
That makes sense.
it does. Okay. Do we have anything more on that one?
Not really. There's a takeaway here. The nonprofit Grafton Woodlands Group has established its own storefront from which to protest the project.
Yeah, to protest the project. I think it's worthwhile pointing out that if these people wanted to have a good effect on their property values, the way to do it might be to go to Iberdrola, which is the company that's going to be putting in the wind turbines, and Stilesbrook Forest, and say, look, we will support this if you will give us the energy from these turbines to supply a microgrid. So that if the grid goes down, one or more of those turbines is going to supply a microgrid in our community.
It would seem that that'd be very easy to do.
It would mean running an electric line for a mile or two. You know, I mean, and then somebody would have to put in the batteries and determine what buildings are going to be on the microgrid and so forth. But it would mean that in the event of a grid failure, you would have emergency buildings given constant supply of energy. So, and constant implies that you've got batteries. But yeah, okay. You want to go on?
Well, that's a model that's going to be happening more and more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it is.
It
Yeah.
just makes sense.
It makes sense. Everybody needs to have security when the grid goes down, and furthermore, we've got these information packets that come from the U.S. government that say, and by the way, gang, we could lose all power in the U.S. for 3 years if we get a coronal ejection.
You've talked about that.
Yeah, we
too.
have indeed. Should we move on?
We shall move on.
Okay, that one came from vtdigger.org. From Rapid News Network, we got this. Hillary Clinton outlined a $30 billion plan to help communities and individuals that rely on coal to recover from the industry's decline. Clinton said repeatedly she will not forget the coal workers who, quote, keep the lights on, end quote, and drove economic growth. Her
Looks like
campaign...
she's praying up there.
She looks like one of those televangelists.
Yeah, exactly.
Her campaign said the plan fits squarely with her climate priorities. And, you know, I think this is a good idea, much as I dislike Hillary. Okay?
Give her credit once in a while.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. When Bill Clinton was president, every once in a while I'd say, yeah, you know, I don't think he's all that bad. And then he'd do something and I'd say, whoa, who have we got in Washington? And Hillary was right there, sitting next to him on the sofa saying, please, this is something that really hurts me. And, you know, please just don't let us deal with this problem of Jennifer Flowers. When he was in New Hampshire running for president on a nomination for the first time, as a lawyer, she should have known that his connection with Jennifer Flowers constituted felonious behavior. He was using taxpayer money in Arkansas to pay somebody for sex.
Yeah.
What is this all about? But, you know, she managed...
alone, I can guarantee you
She
that.
managed to put a spin on it that got the media away. And
I had a tough time opening this from Rapid News Network.
oh, really?
So I went and searched for it, and it came right up. I got it from Bloomberg.
Okay. All right.
Moving right along.
Moving right along. Financial Company Voices told us the UK's Overseas Development Institute and campaign group Oil Change Worldwide have now published a detailed analysis of G20 subsidies to oil, gas, and coal production. The G20 countries spend about 4 times as much to prop up fossil fuel production as they did to subsidize renewable energy. And now, of course, the UK is going to subsidize fracking.
I think it's safe to say that in these G20 countries, the fossil fuel industry is dominated by the same people that dominate the politicians.
Yes, that's right. Which means that the governments of some of these countries, in some respects, including this one, in some respects, are servants not of the people, but of the fossil fuel companies.
The oil oligarchs.
Yeah, like Exxon, which
Yeah, absolutely.
got caught telling lies
Absolutely.
over years and years and years about the negative effects of climate change. All
I don't
right.
think anybody realizes the scope of these subsidies. I mean, we've had fossil fuels for what, 150 years?
Actually,
Maybe longer?
actually longer than that, yeah.
And they're still subsidizing them?
Yes,
Yeah, there's something wrong with that picture.
I think there is, yes. Of course, we've had windmills since the Middle Ages, and we want to subsidize those. You're looking at me
I'm trying to figure
with
out
such a
what
blank face. Well, we've had
Took a
windmills
while
like
to
those
think.
little things in Holland and
yeah,
so
sure.
forth. Well, they're a little bit different from a wind turbine. Okay, I guess I should back out of that conversation. In some senses, they're pretty similar. Yeah. Okay, we're up to Saturday, November 14th, and we got this from HPPR. I have no idea what HPPR is, so don't ask, but this is an interesting thing. Texas wind farms are generating so much energy that some utilities are giving the power away. One example is TXU Energy, which offers a free overnight plan to encourage customers to use less energy when wholesale prices are highest and use more when prices are lowest, which is 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. The plan has slightly higher daytime rates, according to the article, but I will tell you that I did some heavy-duty investigation of this, and there's a lot of difference of opinion on how good this deal is.
There is, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the article explains the why of this.
Yep.
First of all, Texas has more wind power than any other state.
Yep.
It says 10% of the state's power right now is coming from wind.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
The issue is Texas runs its own electricity grid that barely connects with the rest of the country.
Right.
I don't know how that happened, but it is true.
Yep.
So the wind power generated at night must be consumed in Texas.
Yes.
But the wind is strongest at night.
Yes.
So they got all this surplus electricity, so they're giving it away.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get public relations in return for it because they can't get money.
Well,
for it.
they are also getting a higher price during the daytime if you sign up for a wind plan, and there's some
You get a
difference.
higher price
You get
during
a
the
higher
day,
price
yeah.
during the day. But one of the things that's interesting is that the customers who are on this plan can apparently get any amount of free power they want at night. So if they've got huge batteries and they're putting power into those batteries, that's okay.
They can game the system, can't they?
They can indeed, and you know the TXU admits this. They say,
Yeah.
well, you can use that power to power your car if you've
Yeah.
got an electric vehicle, and they don't say it, but apparently it would be possible to put in a Tesla battery, run your power during the daytime from the Tesla battery, and charge the thing at night for free.
It would seem to be quite
So,
within range.
right. So what do? You get a power bill that consists of the connect fee plus
Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
And that, sounds to me like that's free power. All right. You can drive your car for free and
Well,
do a bunch
you
of other
better believe
things.
some people are doing it.
I have no doubt that there are people doing it. And I came across testimonials from people who said this is the greatest thing that ever happened. And of course, they may be TXU employees, but and then there are other people who say, don't you understand that it's not a small difference, it's a huge difference. The average price of power in Texas is 8 cents a kilowatt hour, and they're charging 16 to these people. And so
Well, it's a two-edged sword. Isn't
it's something that I don't think anybody in Vermont has to worry about it because they're not going to be buying power from TXU.
I don't think so.
But nevertheless,
I wouldn't bet against
the
it, but I don't think so.
people in Texas, to sign up for this, they should look at what it all means. Just examine it. It's not like it's concealed.
It's still an interesting development, though.
Well, it follows a development that we have talked about, and it's something that you have said. You know, in the future, people are going to look back at us and say, I can't believe it. Those people actually paid money for electricity. And we may be moving into that territory. Jeremy Rifkin, famous economist, says we're moving into a time when people will be getting their electric power for free. And we could see this happen all over the country. Solar and wind have no marginal cost to speak of. Marginal cost is approaching zero.
It's all about finance.
It's all about finance, that's right. So we'll see what happens out of that.
Well, let's move to Hawaii. It's nice this time of year.
Yes, it is. KHON2, which I would guess is a TV station, says Hawaiian Electric, Maui Electric, and Hawaii, I should pronounce that right, Hawaii Electric Light Company proposed new voluntary time of use rates for residential customers that encourage the use of power during midday. By the way, we're back to what they're doing in Texas. And off-peak hours, or times when solar and wind are most productive. Special rates also support the growing EV market. And, you know, Hawaii, the power costs in Hawaii, or as my mother who lived in Hawaii for a while used to complain about the people in the area of Illinois that I lived in for a while when I was a kid who would say Hawaii. She would say, it's not Hawaii, it's Hawaii.
Do you remember Arthur Godfrey, the television
absolutely.
personality? He had a joke he used to say.
What's that?
He was visiting in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And he met a guy, he saw this guy that looked like a native, and he stopped him and he said, I want you to tell me, is it Hawaii or Hawaii? And the guy says, Hawaii. And he says, oh, thank you very much. And the guy said, you're welcome.
Oh my gosh, Arthur Godfrey. Oh.
Listen, up there is what they're paying for electricity in Oahu.
Oahu. Okay.
Midday, they're paying 13 cents. On peak, which is 4 p.m. to midnight, they're paying 38.5.
Wow.
So
but that's not unusual for Hawaii.
No,
I mean, they're getting all their power from oil. Yep. And that oil is expensive, and it has to be brought in by tanker, and there's all kinds of, issues with that in terms of finances. By the way, Olilu Pelikani Anioi. Do you speak English? Pelikani means English.
Oh.
How do you get to there? They have an alphabet that is AEHIK LMNOPUW and a glottal stop. And that's the wrong glottal stop. That's the wrong sequence for the alphabet. But Pelikani is what you get when you start to translate Britain into Hawaiian. Britain becomes Pelikani because they don't have a B, so they use a P.
Yeah.
They don't have an R, so they use
an
L. But they don't tolerate two consonants that are together, so they put an E in between them.
Okay.
They don't have a T, so they use a K. It's a and the other one is Aloha Mahikiho.
Oh yeah.
And which I heard spoken as a whole lot of hickey ho by a person. It's Happy New Year. Okay.
You watch this show, you never know what you're going to learn, huh?
That's right. Okay, should we move away from this?
Move on to,
Here we are on Sunday. It's BBC time. A record oil glut is set to continue into next year, maintaining pressure on prices. According to the International Energy Agency, I think that is, stockpiles stand at a record 3 billion. I think that's 3 billion barrels. A report follows disappointing Eurozone growth figures and a slump in commodity prices on the back of weaker demand from China, all of which sent stock prices lower. And I don't know where this is going to go, but this oil glut is apparently because Saudi Arabia wanted to pump oil as fast as it possibly can, and now we've got the additional fact that Iran is coming back online. And this is going to end when people who are doing it are no longer interested in doing it, which means that nobody should do anything that depends on a low price of oil. It's just a bad idea.
Well, it isn't going to last forever.
No, it's not going to last forever. It just isn't. What do we have up there? We have somebody burning.
Well, there's just a couple of pictures came from that website to demonstrate what an oil glut's supposed to look like, I guess. But, they're both from the website.
Okay. Should we go on?
I think so.
Okay.
Can't dance.
France plans to go ahead with Global Climate Change Summit in Paris at the end of this month. Prime Minister Manuel Valls said, I don't know how to pronounce French, so if I got that wrong, it's not a surprise, Saturday. Despite a wave of deadly attacks on Friday night that killed nearly 130 people in the capital, the conference, quote, will be held because it's an essential meeting for humanity, end quote. And that is from the Japan Times.
You can bet security will be tight.
Well, security will be tight, but when I read that, I thought, that's why they targeted Paris, because it's an upcoming conference.
It's a good
You know,
possibility.
they're going to target everybody they possibly can all over the world, but they've got a lot of people very angry at them. I don't know what that's going to do. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Not really.
Good.
Not really.
We'll move on to grist. and what they say is this. Bernie Sanders opened Saturday night's Democratic debate by vowing to rid the world of ISIS.
Bingo.
Following up, the moderator pointed out that during the debate last month, Sanders had identified climate change as the greatest threat to national security and asked whether he still believed that. Absolutely, he said.
You know, I've got a link to this talk. It's only 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll work or not, but
Okay.
I'm going to click it and see what happens.
Okay, well,
I think
let's
we can
try it and
afford
see what
2
happens.
minutes.
Yeah, we can afford 2 minutes.
The planet of ISIS. In the previous debate, you said the greatest threat to national security was climate change. Do you still believe that?
Absolutely. In fact, climate change is directly related to the growth of terrorism. And if we do not get our act together and listen to what the scientists say, you're going to see countries all over the world. This is what the CIA says. They're going to be struggling over limited amounts of water, limited amounts of land to grow their crops, and you're going to see all kinds of international conflict. But of course, international terrorism is a major issue that we have got to address today. And I agree with much of what the Secretary and the Governor have said. But let me have one area of disagreement with the Secretary. I think she said something like, the bulk of the responsibility is not ours. Well, in fact, I would argue that the disastrous invasion of Iraq, something that I strongly oppose, has unraveled the region completely and led to the rise of and to ISIS. Now, in fact, what we have got to do, and I think there is widespread agreement here, is the United States cannot do it alone. What we need to do is lead an international coalition which includes, very significantly, the Muslim nations in that region who are going to have to fight and defend their way of life.
On Monday, November 16th, BBC told us this. Human societies will soon start to experience adverse effects from man-made climate change, economist Richard Toll warned. He predicts the downside of warming will outweigh the advantages at 1.1 degrees Celsius increase, which we have already nearly achieved. He had previously commented on the positive effects of climate change, so he was.
Well, this is interesting. This guy is a climate skeptic.
Yeah.
And he's been talking about, you know, we get climate change is going to benefit mankind,
Right.
better crops and all that.
Yeah.
Now he's looking at the bigger picture, and he's saying, wait a second, there are still positive effects, but there's some negative effects, and they outweigh the positive
Yep.
ones.
And I think if you look at the United States and consider the fact that we've had an ongoing drought in California, which is where we get a lot of our vegetables, that has been going for years and may be connected to climate change. And we've had droughts in other parts of the country, and we've had problems with forest fires in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, and we've had other problems that just go on, and Lyme disease moving north and into Vermont, and you name it, it's all going on. 1.1 degrees, I think, is too high. I think the negative effects come in at a lower temperature than that, a lower temperature difference. And that's 1.1 degrees Celsius is a little bit less than 2 degrees Fahrenheit.
I think so, yeah.
I think it is. I might be wrong. It might actually be 2 degrees. But, you know, that doesn't sound like much, but it's enough to...
Divide by 5 multiplied by 9.
Yeah. The thing is that when you warm the world by 2 degrees Fahrenheit, the effect is to warm, among other things, in a place like Vermont, you warm the coldest winter temperatures faster than everything else. So our coldest winter temperatures here in Brattleboro may have gone up 10 degrees in the last 25 years.
30 below to 20 below.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what that means is that The ticks aren't dying. That's right.
Among
And-
other things.
Among other things. So we've got all kinds of problems that are coming into the area, and I don't know how many.
Nobody ever even gave a thought to.
Yeah, I don't know how many people in this area ever heard of Lyme disease, and there are a lot of people who said, "Well, it simply didn't exist until about 25 years ago." But in fact, if you look into it, you find that it is a global problem which existed globally before it was identified as being a problem in Lyme, Connecticut.
So it didn't have a name, but it was still
It had a name. It's just that people in this area were unaware of it. And when it moved into the area, it was first noticed in Lyme, Connecticut. People wrote about it and gave it the name Lyme disease, but it had existed already. So anyway, there we are.
You think maybe there's some Lyme disease in Singapore?
I don't know.
Well, let's go find out.
Singapore?
That's the next
Our
thing
next
coming
thing
up.
is from Apple Insider, which is dealing with Singapore. Apple announced a deal that will see its Singapore operations fully powered by solar energy, expanding on similar efforts in countries like the United States and China. And it confirmed an upcoming local Apple store that will be the first in Southeast Asia. Developer Sunseep Group will supply Apple panels on 800 rooftops.
There's a picture of Singapore, which I
Apple
have to
Insider.
say, is it completely at variance with my impression of what Singapore was.
Well, it's easy to believe. Singapore is a pretty...
Pretty advanced society.
Yeah.
It's a very small country.
Yep. A lot of people don't realize it's a country.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on there, a
Lot
lot of
going on.
economic activity going
Yeah.
on there. You can better believe of those buildings you see there, about more than half of them are banks.
Well, I can tell you one thing about Singapore, and that is that I get a lot of visits to my blog from Singapore.
Do you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting. I've had far more from Singapore than I have had from, Mongolia or
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
Albania. I've had visits to the website from over 100 countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a fair number of them from Singapore compared to Mongolia and Albania. Okay, Daily Californian. Findings from real estate appraisal experts and a researcher at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory suggest that adding a photovoltaic solar power system to a home increases the home's value across 6 states. Those not being the only 6 states where it happened, but the 6 states that they studied. The study looked at markets in California, Oregon, Florida, Maryland, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, and for the life of me, I cannot understand why they didn't look at New Jersey and New Jersey. They said North Carolina, but New Jersey is one of the biggest solar places in the country, and I would think
Well,
that they would look
the
there.
article didn't explain how they chose these 6 states.
Yeah,
And so, but I think it's intuitive. If you put a working solar system on your house and you go to sell the house is going to be more attractive.
well, yes. Although there are
You're pretty
people,
likely not
yeah,
to sell it for less than you pay
right.
for.
But there are people who are anti-solar who will tell you that your house value is going to go down because it's got those ugly panels on the roof.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, they're
And-
nice one.
They're an eyesore. By golly.
You know, so is transmission lines, so are telephone towers.
You know, when I was a kid,
lot of eyesores out
when I
there.
lived in Illinois, and I lived in Illinois for maybe half of my childhood. I lived in New Hampshire too, but I lived in Illinois for about half of my childhood, and I came to the conclusion that cornfields are an eyesore.
That's a new one on me.
You go out there and you look at what it looks like when you drive in a car for mile after mile after mile after mile after mile. All you
that's just
see
boring.
is corn and corn and corn, and then for half the year the cornfields are empty. So you just see dirt and dirt and dirt with corn stubble sticking up out of the soil, and every once in a while you get this absolutely picturesque farmhouse with chickens running around out front. You have to slow down for the chickens. I don't dislike Illinois, but I mean there are worse things in the world than solar panels, and I don't think cornfields are attractive.
I never thought of cornfields that way, but then I've never been surrounded by so many as you were in Illinois.
Whoa, yeah. Well, okay, we're up to Tuesday, November 17th, and this says a record $391 billion flowed into low carbon and climate resilient growth in 2014, according to a report released by Climate Policy Initiative. The fresh figures came just 2 weeks before the COP21 climate talks begin in Paris, where finance is expected to play a pivotal role in scoring a robust global deal for a safe climate. This is from the climate group. Do we need to talk about this?
Looking for some takeaways here.
You
It
always
just
take
says
something.
that nearly $300 billion of U.S. dollars investments
Right.
went into renewable energy,
Yep.
largely driven by the attraction of falling clean technology costs
Yep.
to businesses.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Apparently, some of the world's most influential companies are committing to going 100%.
Well, we're seeing more and more of that. We really are.
Again, it's
And
about
again,
economics.
there was something that came up today that we'll talk about next week. But
Give us a hint.
it was companies signing on, and the amount of investment that they've done, the amount of energy that is produced by the investment that they've done this year is up about 35% from what it was in 2014 globally. And it's a huge amount. I don't remember the amount, but the number of gigawatts of renewable power that were coming online because of these investments was very high. Our next item comes from Blue and Green Tomorrow. The C20 Sustainability Working Group is asking the G20 to stop fossil fuel subsidies. The G20 promised to phase them out in 2009, but they still pump $452 billion annually into exploration and production of fossil fuels, according to a report from the Overseas Development Institute released last week. Now, $452 billion, and a large amount of that is in exploration. And
Yeah.
we know that 80% of the fuel that they're finding has got to stay in the ground in order to deal with climate change. But they're still looking. Why are they looking? Because they can make money by looking. And they can make money by looking because governments are paying them to look.
Aha. That's a secret you just let out. Isn't it?
But $452 billion, and this is just from 20 countries. This is not from all countries combined.
Well, I know who the G20 is. It's called the Group of 20, and it's the
Yeah.
20 most advanced industrialized countries in
Right,
the world.
right.
I'm not sure who the C20 is.
Well, it's a sustainability working group, and it's like any
a subgroup
you and
of
I
G20?
no,
No,
this is a separate group.
independent.
Yep, and you and I could form a B20 sustainability working group and become famous. Tom, why don't we do that?
This is a quick takeaway. Fossil fuel subsidies aren't just bad for the climate. They also ignore, and we've talked about this, the rising health cost of air pollution.
Rising health costs of air pollution. Outside air pollution kills 10,000 people in this world every day. That, according to the WHO.
That's a significant number.
That's as many soldiers and
They
sailors
just
as were
said,
killed in the
that's
Second
it.
World War every day.
Wow.
You know, and so this is and that does not count civilians during the Second World War. So I'm not trying to diminish that, but this is a lot of people, 10,000 people a day. And honestly, I don't think that figure is right. I think it's very low because 4,400 is the figure for China. And I believe there's probably more people than that being killed by outdoor air pollution in India every day. It's almost got the same population, and it's got much worse air than China, believe it or not. And that doesn't count people who die. And the figure that I saw for life expectancy in Western Europe is the average person in Western Europe has lost 9 years of his or her life due to outdoor air pollution from fossil fuels.
We don't think in terms of this.
No, we
We
don't.
just don't.
So how many months have we lost as individuals? They're not that different from Western Europe. Vermont's air is clean, but it's not as clean as it should be, as we know because we're finding mercury in all our streams.
Yeah.
But
One of the reasons we don't notice this is these people just don't fall over and die. They get sick, and
That's
they're sick
exactly
for a long
right.
time.
That's
and
exactly right.
eventually they die,
Yeah.
and this is why they died.
Right.
But nobody thinks about that.
Nobody
Well, they
thinks
got
about it.
emphysema.
Yes, they had emphysema. Yeah, the fact that they didn't smoke is it's just kind of mind-boggling. But or even if they did smoke, the problem is exacerbated.
Exacerbated.
Yeah, and Yeah, that's what it is. And it's not just emphysema, it's asthma. So anybody who's suffering from asthma is probably suffering from a condition that's exacerbated by the fossil fuels industry. Anybody who's got a problem with any kind of chronic respiratory disorder or circulatory disorder is in that same group. And
There's a whole raft of things.
there's a whole raft of
that can
things.
happen from
That's
that.
right. And the amount of money worldwide, the lowest figure I've seen for the external costs of the fossil fuel industry, the costs to our society that they are generating but not paying for, is $1.6 trillion a year. And that is the lowest figure I've seen. The highest is 7 trillion.
That's too big to comprehend.
Oh yeah, well it's, it's like
A trillion here for a trillion there, pretty soon you have some real money, right?
$1.6 trillion is half the US national budget.
Okay.
It's more money than it's more money than I spend on lunch, I can tell you that. And I'm a big guy. Okay.
Moving right along.
Okay. Value walk. That previous thing, by the way, in case I didn't mention it, is from Blue and Green Tomorrow. Value
You
walk.
did mention it. Yeah.
I did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll unmention it.
Say it backwards.
I'm sorry, I'm not quick enough. Value Walk has told us that Tesla Motors CTO J.B. Straubel told engineering students at the University of Nevada that the Gigafactory was designed to be a net zero building with zero carbon emissions. What makes this statement more special is that the building will reportedly be one of the largest man-made structures on Earth when it's completed. And
That is a very, very large building.
yeah,
And
those
we're not going
dots.
to leave it up there long enough, but if you search in that picture, in that photograph, there's a couple of pictures of vehicles,
Yeah.
which will give you some idea
Yeah.
of the size of that
They're-
building.
they're basically
Look at the
dots.
lower right, there's a couple of pickup trucks there.
Okay.
And
You can actually identify them as pickup trucks?
yeah.
I'll bet they're not pickup trucks. I'll bet they're
Well, one of them
50-ton
partially
dump
concealed
trucks.
by the other one, so you can't really tell. But they look like pickups.
Okay.
So that is a very big
This is a
factory.
huge building, And they're
Well,
going to
but this article is not so much about the hugeness of the factory. We've talked about that already.
Yeah.
But it's going to be net zero.
It's going to be net zero. That's
Which
right.
doesn't mean they're going to be off the grid, but it means they're going to be putting back as much as they take.
Or more.
The whole roof's going to be solar panels.
The whole roof is solar panels. I've seen pictures of this. It's it looks like it's stunning. It really is.
And they've designed that right into it from the beginning.
Yes, they did. So they're right there on the leading edge. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, November 18th, and we got this from Business Recorder. It was all over the news. I could have got it from almost anywhere. The Republican-run U.S. Senate adopted 2 resolutions to shoot down key rules of Barack Obama administration wants to limit greenhouse gas emissions by power plants. The president will veto the move. The 52-46 vote was largely meant to draw attention to the hostility of the Republicans to the Obama administration's efforts on climate change. And this does remind me a little bit of a vote that came before the Congress and it passed, thanking one L.H. Oswald for his services rendered to the United States in Dallas, Texas,
Wow.
on a date which was, I've forgotten the date of JFK's death, but it was
November 11th, I think.
was it? Wow. But it was
Yeah.
clear that they were saying, and the person who
November 22nd.
who put this before the Congress was making a point, which was that the Congress passes things without thought. Now, this particular one, I think, was passed by the Senate Republicans without thought. They were being told to do it, and they did it, and they did it because they were told to do it. But if they
Trying to make a point is all.
if they thought about this for any length of time, they would have realized that the majority of the people in the Republican Party want the administration's climate change rules to go into effect because they're worried about climate change. So the Republican Party has distanced itself from its own voters, separated itself and distanced itself.
But it does have a base that's very vocal. And
It
that's
has-
who they're playing.
That's right. But the thing is, the people who will appreciate this are people who live in places where the majority of the voters deny climate change. So this will only
It's going
support.
to help these guys.
It'll help a tiny subset. And you know, it's not going to take.
Isn't politics wonderful?
Yeah. You look at where does this happen? Okay, Oklahoma maybe? Oklahoma is a state that is experiencing more earthquakes than California now. And why is that? Because of fracking. And the people in Oklahoma are starting to become aware of the fact that the fossil fuel industry is not working in their interest. I don't think it could backfire. I think it will backfire, almost certainly. And it will have a very profound, very forceful effect, I believe, in the upcoming election, which will be possibly make it impossible for a Republican to be elected in a lot of places, and that includes the president. I expect that the next president of the United States will probably be a Democrat. And the reason is because of
Because of some of the wacky things that's going on.
well, the Republican Party, like the government of the UK, is acting in a way which is just out of touch with reality,
At
and
least out of touch with the people.
with the people. But I mean, out of touch with reality. They're you know, these are people. Rick Santorum said he wished the Pope would leave science to the scientists. Well, the Pope has a master's degree in chemistry, and Rick Santorum is what, a lawyer?
I don't know what he is.
I don't know what he is either, but clearly
He's not a scientist.
he's not a scientist, and he is not paying attention to what science says. That MSNBC thing that I keep bringing up, they looked at 70,000 climate scientists, and they were able to find 4 who denied climate change. Not 4,000, not 4%, just 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And one of those 4 we know has been paid.
Has been paid, that's right. We know that Willie Soon was paid. Of course, I don't think he counts because he's not a climate scientist. Nevertheless, we're on to the Toronto Star.
I love this one.
A 2-year pilot project, I thought you'd like this,
Oh, this is great.
will store a tiny bit of Toronto's excess energy underwater in giant balloons. Local energy firm HydroStore and Toronto Hydro are partnering on the project. HydroStore's system is expected to improve power quality for residents of the Toronto Islands while engineers monitor and test the performance.
This is a pilot plant, really.
This is a pilot plant, and those 2 big bags that are on the right and left of the right-hand picture there, I believe are ballast bags. They're probably just filled with stone. And
No, the one in the middle, I think, is a ballast bag filled with stone.
oh, really?
The 2 on the side are these balloons.
Okay.
Which, by the way, they exist. They're on the shelf. You can buy one of these things this afternoon. They use them to pull ships that have sunk from the bottom of the sea.
Really? Oh my gosh.
So these guys have taken existing technology. They're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
That's what I like about this.
Yeah.
This is so low tech. And it's totally expandable.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
they're
You
talking
could use it
about
anywhere where you've got.
6 of these balloons for this trial, but they could easily have 600 of them.
Absolutely. You can do this almost anywhere where you've got a
200
reasonable
feet lake.
200 feet depth of water and a reasonably level floor where you can drop something and it'll stay in place.
I imagine they will build a structure to support them down there, you know.
Yeah.
And, set them and forget them.
This is from the Toronto Star. Thank you, Toronto Star.
Very, very interesting article. I mean,
I thought that was really fascinating, that picture of the bag.
yeah.
Tom and I are going to show a bag to
I'll give you a quick way. It's intuitive anyhow.
Yeah?
But it works by stockpiling surplus energy
Yeah.
generated during off-peak periods and converting it to compressed air.
Yeah.
You know, with just a regular motor,
Yeah,
compressor.
absolutely.
This air is then sent underwater, stored in balloons, and saved.
Yep.
The wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, and certainly not at the right amount when you need it. So they say.
So they say.
So when
Although
the
I have
demand for
I have
energy
a bone
rises,
to pick with that idea. Go
and the
ahead.
grid needs a boost, the weight of the water forces the air back to the surface through a large pipe, and they call it an expander, converts it back to electricity.
There you go. Okay.
This isn't even high school science.
No, it's not. Well, it's the kind of, Steve Allen on his show in the 1950s,
Yeah.
he used to do things that were. He had a guy who was a physicist on the thing, and he would explain various things about physics. And one of the things that he did that I remember was he wanted to explain air pressure. And the way that he did this was he had a box built out of steel, and it was 6 feet to a side. Now this is not thick steel; this is thin steel. It's just welded together. And what he did was he said, "I'm going to crush this box using just atmospheric pressure."
Okay.
And so he put a fire under the box, and he had a small amount of water in the box. And when he decided that the steam from this had been going out of the box for a reasonably long period of time, and that there wasn't very much actual air in there anymore, he capped the thing, stopped the fire, and played a fire hose on it, and it just went crushed.
Interesting. I can visualize it happening. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yes, indeed. Amazing. It's amazing what you can do if you know how to do it with science. Okay.
Well, let's move on.
The Washington Post is next. After a concerted push from the United States, members of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development agreed to cut subsidies aimed at exporting technology for coal-fired power plants. The policy would effectively cut off public financing for 85% of coal plants currently in the pipeline, the official said.
Now, that's they're cutting off public financing for money that they had planned on spending.
Yeah,
So the private financing's not going to be, it's not going to be available.
yeah.
So these plants aren't going to get built.
Well,
Most of them won't.
maybe that's why China's building plants, because they know that they've got to build those plants before the money to build them runs out. And they're not interested in coal plants,
that's
they're
pretty
just
likely,
interested
actually.
in collecting money and spending it on construction.
That's pretty likely.
Okay, that was from the Washington Post. And our final piece for the day says the Massachusetts House has passed a bill to boost the state's reliance on solar energy.
And there's the Massachusetts House.
Wow. That house is in Marshfield, Massachusetts.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
How do you know?
I read the caption. I used to live down near Marshfield. So, you know, I saw that name and I said, whoa, that's not far from where I lived.
Well, it sounds like a good bill. It's increasing the cap on the state's net metering program.
Right.
But the critics are saying it isn't enough.
Yeah, the measure increases the cap on the state's net metering program, which allows homeowners, businesses, and local governments to sell excess solar power they generate back to the electric grid in exchange for credit. And this comes from WWLP.com. And WWLP is channel 22 in Springfield, Mass.
Okay, you could probably get that from here.
It used to be, years ago, that there was a station in Winchester, New Hampshire called WRLP.
Uh-huh.
And it was the sister station of WWLP.
Okay.
And I lived very close to the station building.
Yeah.
About a quarter of a mile or so away from it. And when I was a kid, we used to go up there and put dimes in the soda machine and get soda. And so I got kind of familiar with that station. And that was channel 32, and it was there to broadcast to Brattleboro, Greenfield, and Keene. And
So it's a satellite.
it was sort of.
Transmitter.
Yeah, it was a satellite transmitter. And so that's why I know about that. But nevertheless, what we're talking about here is really the bill that was passed by the Massachusetts House, and what they're doing is they're continuing a program, expanding a program that makes it possible for people to put solar
To sell their excess power.
to sell their excess power, and actually to profit by selling that excess power.
What's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it, and especially when you consider that. And this is something that you know there are significant organizations in this world that are trying to make things difficult for every form of renewable power possible. And you know, we've seen this happen where a small solar array has been attacked by a local population that is fed bad information about it, such as the idea that you know, it's going to leak cadmium into the soil or something like that. You know. And
We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
That is just,
but there are people who are trying to end solar net metering because I think I think people should understand that the fossil fuel industry is the largest industry in the world. And
Is it really?
go to
I
Wikipedia.
can believe it. No, I can believe it.
Go to
I just
Wikipedia.
never thought of it.
Yeah, go to Wikipedia. Look at the article that's titled List of Largest Companies by Revenue. List of Largest Companies by Revenue. And that will give you a list of the 63 largest companies in the world. And they haven't limited it to 63. They've limited only to companies that make more than $100 billion a year in revenues.
Okay.
And of those 63 companies, of course, they'll change it from day to day if the information they have changes. But the last time I looked, it was 63 companies. Those 63 companies, include 21. A third of them are in the oil and gas industry.
A third.
A third of the largest companies in the world are
Okay.
listed as being in the oil and gas sector. And those companies have combined revenues that are about almost double the revenues of the budget of the United States government. This is huge. This is $6.5 trillion a year, and they're in a position where the Dow Jones Oil Index is down 30% this year so far, because of bad revenues in the oil industry. The oil industry is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
The coal industry
Is suffering.
is
Big time.
whoa. Most of the companies on the coal index have been delisted, and the coal industry is just plain suffering big time. It's lost 99% of its well. Most of the companies have lost over 99% of their value. The ones that had natural gas and transportation and so forth, like Consus, have not. But there's only 2 companies left in the Dow Jones Coal Index. The rest have been delisted. And the coal is just in desperate trouble. Meanwhile, wind, solar, they just keep expanding. And these big companies that are the biggest companies in the world are looking at this and saying, whoa, we can't deal with this. Let's just try to slow things down, try to stop things altogether, lie, cheat, steal, and whatever we need to do. In some cases, I think that's what they do.
That's exactly what.
Well, and there are oil companies that are not doing that, but certainly, we've had the example of Exxon, which we have every reason to believe has been lying about climate change for 35 years in order to protect its profits, which is
Can't say I blame them.
except for one thing, and that is it's unethical, and another thing, which is it's illegal.
Well, that
It's
doesn't
fraud.
bother them.
It doesn't bother them. It constitutes fraud, and fraud over a period of time like that has a name for it, it's called racketeering, and they should suffer the consequences of that. But the stuff that we've been seeing in attacks on renewable energy, rooftop, utility scale, doesn't matter. It all gets attacked.
Yeah.
It all gets attacked by somebody. And so,
I'm thinking about an event that happened.
yeah.
One time in my life, I was a ski instructor at Magic Mountain.
Wow.
And one time in my life, I was a ski instructor at about all of these different mountains around here.
Okay.
But Magic Mountain at that time was deciding they wanted to put up a wind turbine. This is quite a long time ago, before wind turbines were popular.
Yeah.
It was going to be used to offset the cost of power, which, as you can expect, with running a ski lift and all of that, is high. So they wanted to put up this wind turbine on top of the ski mountain.
Right.
Okay, and they had a meeting, all of the townspeople, to see if it was opposition popping up is what it was. So they decided to have a meeting. And I went to the meeting. And the first thing I noticed is most of the people at the meeting, with their clothing and their coiffes, did not appear to be Vermonters. And I looked outside and it was all Cadillacs and Lincolns in
Oh
the
my
parking
gosh.
lot.
Yes.
Now, a friend of mine was at the meeting with me, and we're walking out, and I'm looking at these cars and those people. He says, something's wrong with this picture.
Yes.
And he says, no. He says, I work weekends as a greeter at Stratton Mountain. I know most of these people. They're all Stratton Mountain skiers. They have mountaintop houses, and they don't want their view spoiled.
Well, isn't that sad? There are people in this world who think the view is improved. Tom, it's time to say goodbye.
I guess it is.
Yeah.
I guess it is.
So we will say goodbye, and we will invite everybody to come back next week, or even this week. Come back again.
See you later. To all the world, and makes the wind blow strong as it